Good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us in the latest of the webinars produced by NAVTOR. Today's webinar is all about digital logbooks. So I'll take you through for a quick agenda, and then we'll look at what we're going to do, and I'll introduce you to my colleagues for today's presentations. So today, as I said, is the latest in our presentation of NAVTOR webinars. This is number 14 in our series. This is digital logbooks. We'll call it Mark II. We've done the first one about a year ago. This is an update on what's new, what's great, and what's changed with digital logbooks over time. So for an agenda for today, I'm going to hand off over to Børge Hetland, who is CCO of NAVTOR, for a welcome message. I'm then going to hand over to Captain Amitabh, who is the Director of Shipping Analytics for NAVTOR, and also our Managing Director of NAVTOR India. He's going to talk us through digital logbooks. After that, we'll come back and recap on what we've seen, and then we're going to open up for a live Q&A with Ken Leo, who is the Product Manager for digital logbooks, and Captain Amitabh will come back on for that as well. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll move forward and I will introduce Børge Hetland, who is our Chief Operating Officer for NAVTOR.
Hello everyone, long time no see. Thanks for joining today's webinar about digital logbooks. We really appreciate it. Going from paper-based log keeping into digital log keeping is in many ways a quantum leap or a paradigm shift. It's not paper logbooks version 2. I think it can be compared with going from paper-based navigation to Actis and digital navigation, as there are so many benefits with digital log keeping compared to paper-based log keeping. As you know, NAVTOR's vision have always been to help our customers to become more efficient, to reduce workload, to enhance decision making, stay compliant, and to become more competitive in your market. And this is exactly what we believe digital logbooks is doing. So as you can understand, here at NAVTOR we have a great belief in digital logbooks, and it's a pleasure to hand you over to Richard and then later on Amitabh, who will tell you how we can make, or how digital logbooks can make that data alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Børge. That's very kind. I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping on the platform we're running today. The best performance is usually run in Google Chrome. What you'll see at the top right-hand corner of your screens is a set of handouts for the session today. Also, there's two buttons, one for questions and one for comments. Please, if you have questions, feel free to fire in the questions. We'll get to those at the live Q&A, and I'll go through all of the questions that are asked. Comments, we always welcome comments at NAVTOR, so please feel free to use the comments. If the questions come through in comments, we'll try and transfer them over to the questions section and make sure we've covered off all the questions as we go through. But again, thank you for joining us today, and I make no apology in bringing up a slide I've demonstrated on many occasions, although it's changed slightly. What we used to call our ecosystem, we now call our NAVTOR Suite. NAVTOR Suite describes how our products all connect. Really at the center of everything, we have the NAVTOR NavBox. The NavBox gives us the communication piece from ship to shore through the Nav Cloud. And this takes data in as close to real time as possible from the vessel, and it makes it available shoreside as well. So everyone is working on the same data. And this is critical to everything we do going forward. And you'll now see digital logbooks living within the NAVTOR Suite, again, reporting through the NavBox. There's communication from NavBox out to Actis as well, which is possible. And NavBox is our sensor gathering tool as well, which Amitabh will cover off. And ashore side, you'll see multiple products there that can dip into the data we produce on board and allow real-time and granular investigation to that data, and gives much more, much wider view of what's actually going on board. So that's, again, I revisit the NAVTOR suite, but it's good to always take a view on what we're doing. What I'm going to do now is hand across to Captain Amitabh, who I introduced in the agenda to start with, and he's going to take us through this version 2, what we're seeing and what's changed. Now I'm going to ask what I think are some questions I've pulled together, which hopefully will cover off some of the questions that will come today, but please feel free to put any questions you like in the question section. So over to you, Amitabh.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting Digital Logbooks Part 2. I'm just going to share my screen. I think my presentation should be up. Um, yeah, so thanks for the introduction, Richard, and setting the context. Of course, we'll be looking to take a lot more questions as we go along. I will run you through my presentation, and I can also show you some parts of the logbook live where we get a chance. So for those who have joined us for the first time, I just wanted to recap a little bit on the regulations which allowed digital logbooks to be present on board ships. So this came in force in October 2020, and that meant that electronic record books could be used on board, but of course as a voluntary provision. So if you do wish to go digital, then the option is there. And the initial introduction of logs was somewhat defined as uh, related to environmental logs. So the first ones that we took digital were the oil record books. Thereafter, quite a number of environmental logs were followed. And from then on, we went on to also create the deck and engine log. So as such, the regulation has been there now for some time, and we've enhanced in Mark II to have a complete unified solution for all log keeping. And that's where what we've been able to do is we've been able to progress from, of course, just a pure regulation that was stated and converted into a practical tool which is running on board, with quite a few of our ships now being paperless and gathering all the records in the digital form, as well as benefiting from that digitization that we have on board. So as I skip, sorry, yeah, to the next slide. Uh, as we have progressed on this journey, it's been now some time. So we've always been focused on the value proposition. And when you look at logbooks, there's a lot of log keeping and events being recorded, and it's always been a sort of pain area for ships where there have been numerous cases of duplication with paper and other reporting that happens. As well as when you go digital, there's a lot of doubt about how the regulations come across, and do they allow digital logs, and are these really rigid logs, or are they customizable, or let's say configurable to suit the company requirements. And of course, end of the day, you're looking to reduce the burden on board, have compliances automatically, and ensure that you don't have anything that is lingering in your logs which could cause worries for you in the future. And if possible, you would also like to have automated reports and such inclusions within the logs, which actually does reduce the burden. So we are focused on these areas, and of course the pain areas. I wouldn't run through all of them in detail, but all of you who are seafarers on board would know and still continue to be a sort of victim of the ISM burden of paperwork that came about. So as on date now, when we offer our product and service with the many logs that can come in, we are looking to integrate all of this data so that you actually start to benefit from that reduction in the admin burden. And of course, being uh, having more logs in the same umbrella communicating with each other has meant that there are greater economies from the cost perspective, as well as time perspective, and a greater accuracy of data that can be created. So when you look at the complete solution right now, we have, of course, all logs possible, and we can also include more logbooks based on the ISM requirements or the flag requirements of the particular vessel that you're operating. When we say configurable to company requirements, this means that we have taken the operational logs that normally you would be using on board, and made them quite similar in our system. So we don't really give you a system that is rigid. That means that is a one size fits all, but we would rather give you a solution that is very much closer to what you're doing at present, and at the same time giving you the benefits of digitization as you go along. The other change that we made was we realized that log keeping is a little bit of an after event record keeping, and if we could really bring it into the workflow as you go along, then log keeping could be that much more easier. So we've included workflows which is in the form of checklists, where you can actually um, at, at the end of completing a checklist log certain data automatically, thereby reducing the time to log such data as well as the effort to go to a digital system and specifically log something at a later point of time. So we've also been iterating a lot, and Mark II has meant that we've gathered a lot of the vital feedback from our clients who are using our solution, and many wonderful suggestions have come across, which has meant that we have incorporated those and are continuing to do so to make our system better and better as it goes on. So that's a little bit of what we have done. But essentially, if I were to tell you about the new functionality that we have brought in, uh, we are now installing the logs on the NavBox, which Richard mentioned is the backbone of the solutions we provide on board the ships. And this means that we can aggregate data into the NavBox. And the first part that we have taken, of course, is the navigation data. So we've got the GPS and navigation data coming in, which can be shared with the logbooks. And as you may have sometimes on board systems which are available on the edge that can provide more data. We're talking to various clients where we can integrate sensor data feeds into the nav box. So this would mean that we would have a standard list of data points that can come in, and from those standard list of data points, they would be possible to consume in the logs. So in that respect, the user may not have to enter so many manual inputs going forward. But this is something that requires let's say customization and custom building as per the sort of service provider you have in the systems you have on board. But with the navbox, we do have this part automated right away. So as we went along introducing these logbooks, we created a system whereby if you log an event in a particular log, that also could be the source of data to the other log if this is repeated across. And what this means is basically all these logs communicate with each other. Some flag states require the data from the logbooks to be sent to the VDR. So we have that feature as well incorporated now. And as we went along, as I mentioned, checklists could be a good source of logging events. So we can actually create checklists, not our checklist, but the checklist that you use on your ships. We can recreate them within the system and link log keeping events to them. The other thing that we also discovered was people are always looking for something more intuitive. They're not looking for a design which is just like a logbook. So we, and a system that can prompt you also what needs to be done next. So we've created this auto logging system with a task bar which generates all the tasks that you need to complete with respect to log keeping. Once those tasks come up, you can there would be a hyperlink for you to click and just complete that task, and your log keeping is done with that. So these frequencies of how and when these tasks are generated can be set by the ship themselves or the company as per their ISM or SMS norms that they wish to follow. So these are a few of the new features that came in, and this is what we have been continuously working on in collaboration with our uh, with our vessels, as well as suggestions from the managers as we've gone along.
Captain Amitabh, may I ask a question? What is NAVTOR's experience with actually vessels going paperless? It would be great to see these details, but how does a ship actually go paperless?
Right, I'll just come to that, Richard, in a bit. So, or I can jump to that slide now. But I just wanted to talk about also, when you're talking about going paperless, you have to make it easy, and that's where we also realized when you're looking at operational logs, having a mobile device is quite essential, and that's when we've introduced the NavStation app, which is available on the Android and iOS store. You can download it from there, and it makes log keeping possible on the go. You can actually even speak to the log to log from voice to text, which is quite interesting. And of course, there are many other features that are there within this, which I can talk about. But coming back to your question, Richard, on the going paperless. So going paperless is a function of many factors. So one is, of course, the vessels run and how ready they are to go paperless. Then, of course, the first hurdle that has to be cleared is about the flag acceptance for your particular vessel. So how the system runs is at the software level, we have a software type approval, but once the software is installed on board, the flag has to give a certificate to the vessel. So this is just like any other ship's certificate, and that certificate is either issued through the classification body or by the flag themselves. So where the flags are quite sizable and have a machinery to do it, they go in and issue this certificate on their own. So examples of those flags are Panama, Marshall Islands, and Liberia, whereas the other flags they rely on maybe DNV or LR to get these going live, to get the certificate to the vessel. So in terms of experience of taking a ship live, there is the regulatory part that forms the first, let's say, uh, tick box that you have to satisfy. And once you've done that, of course, there is it's not a change that we talk about, which is just okay, get your logs installed and get going. Maybe you have a ship coming out of a new build shipyard and you want to start day one with logs. Yes, maybe a few years down the line that would be possible, but if it's a new system, then definitely there is some time involved, and that's where I outlined a few of the steps that we take, which makes it possible for you to really go paperless. So at the initial level, if a customer asks us for a certain number of logs, then we of course agree that they on the set of logs that we start, and these can be taken in a modular basis because you don't want to overwhelm the ship staff with too many logs. So let's say if it's an oil record book that you want, we gather the information related to the tanks and other details of your ship. Once we have verified the documents, we place this model on board the vessel. So that installation is done on the nav box, and once it's set up in the nav box and ready, that's when the training and familiarization can happen. Thereafter, there is the period where you go live. So when you go live, the part with the flag state and the classification body comes in. So these are the various stages involved, and if you look at it, it takes close to maybe 30 to 60 days for the training and familiarization to complete before you can go live. And the go live part is a function of how the ROs and the classification bodies are dealing with the particular certification. So as such, we have experienced, of course, different flags, different classes, and we of course are also looking to make it shorter and faster. But this is the process involved, and it also involves a lot of hand holding during this period. So for that, we have a marine and technical team that actually communicates with the vessel to make this period shortest as possible so that you're ready to go live. So when you go live, what happens is we clear out all the training records, and then from that point you're paperless, and you don't have to maintain any records of the logs that you have certified for in the paper form anymore. So I hope, Richard, I've answered that, probably in parts, but if there's anything more,
Yes, you have.
feel free to. Thanks.
Thank you. One other question is, you mentioned training. I think that's really important. How do NAVTOR ensure that users are trained and ready to make the change? We talk about a period of change, but can you explain the training itself?
Right. So for the training part, we have a specific, let's say, list of activities, and over time we have tested this to see that we want the person to comb through every part of the logbook which is relevant to their log keeping. So we give some time and we have some checks where we can monitor what's happening, and then once we are satisfied, we communicate it to the manager, and then the decision is taken as to when the ship can go live. But besides that, of course, we also have the NAVTOR training academy where you can go online and complete a course. It'll familiarize you with the logs, We have training videos, and of course, like every other software, there is uh, a manual, an FAQ document, and many other parts. But the intensity of the training is very much defined by how the ship is completing these tasks. And once that is done, then you probably are ready to really take the ship live. So yeah, moving on to some parts of the software where we have made changes. I thought I would just show you a brief glimpse of these. So one is, of course, these task lists that come up. So when you have a task list in the log, these could be related to any one of the logbooks which you are subscribing to. So it could be the engine log, deck log, or the environmental log. So these would show up as a task for you with a due date and time. If that goes overdue, it'll be showing red. If it has just come up, it would be just showing as a new task. And as and when the task is due, you would be having a hyperlink which you can click on and just complete. So if a watchkeeper were to come on watch and he just clicks on auto trigger and he says generate for me for the next 4 hours what I need to do, the system will generate it as per the defined norms of your company. And once those are defined here, he just goes away finishing these tasks. So this has made it a little more where we are sort of changed the connection of the seafarer with a paper-based log to a digital system. Sometimes they lose context. So if you want to retain or prompt the user, this has been a very effective method that we have been able to implement on board. Besides that, I mentioned checklists. So this is a sample checklist that we have created. Of course, these would be made specific to a company requirement. And where the checklist is really interesting is because we actually now have timestamps also captured with every action that you complete. And on the basis of those data points, you could actually trigger another action, or maybe it's, let's say you have WindForce 7 logged down in the system, that could cause you to say that you must complete your heavy weather checklist. So that's the way we've tried to correlate it to the workflow, as well as make sure that you can achieve some part of your log keeping directly by just by virtue of completing your checklist. So we also have a button which is autofill, which would then, if for any of the fields that are configured here, if the data is coming from a sensor, um, let's say database that you have aggregated on the nav box, we can pull that information in here automatically. Likewise, if it's for reports or any other data, we can also generate that. One challenge that we had was when we went about, especially the what we have found so far is that environmental logs are easy because they're pretty standard formats. But when you look at operational logs, it's been a sort of different assortment of requirements from every client that we've come across. So we went about saying we would give you a configurable logbook, which is very similar to what you're doing in your existing paper logs, but then filling it in a form was sort of considered very difficult and time taking. So what we've done now is we've actually recreated these templates in the system, and you could just click on any one of the cells on the template and go and enter the data. So it's made it that much easier for you to relate to what you're doing, and preserve some sort of similarity with your paper logs when you go digital. And you also have a quick overview of what is filled and what is not filled. So the other method could be by completing the auto task that I just showed you before. And there is a menu system where you can select, maybe I want to do a gyro error or noon report. So from that list of activities, you could also come in. And where there is possibilities to fill in some data automatically, the autofill also comes in. So these are all uh, these are all combinations that we create. And of course, these are done also very much in discussion with the office, because certain fields may be possible, certain fields may not be possible. And we sort of take pride in the fact that we can do these and make it more suitable to what you actually desire in the log when you take this forward. But the downside to this is that we of course have to discuss it, and we can't just flick this switch and say your deck logbook is up and running the next day. So we've also looked at reports. So many of the logbooks are actually used for reports, and what this has meant is that Again, you get duplicate data across logs, or you get incorrect, inconsistent data. And for this, from the deck logbook or the engine logbooks, you can actually create reports, and those reports can feed into other parts of the logbooks, or these could consume data from elsewhere. And the autofill is a sort of magic button that you could use to actually not have to enter so many fields in the logbook, and just have to do only the basic ones. But as we see this going forward, we would have more and more automation coming in, and we somewhat foresee a future where the user would have to do fewer and fewer manual entries as he goes forward. So this can also be a very effective tool if you want to combine it with charters reports or any other reporting, because now you get a seamless flow from the source data to various other reports without having to duplicate it.
Captain
Uh,
Amitabh, may I
right.
ask, so we talk about the different reports we can generate. How do we keep up with regulatory change? And also, I suppose, what analytics are actually possible from NAVTOR digital logbooks?
Right. Yeah. So now that all the data that comes in is digitized, there's a lot that you can do on the analytics. And for keeping up with regulatory changes, what we do is I can show some of the screens later on when we show the application, that we have a system where we can push any changes to the vessel. And if let's say the coming changes for the ballast water record book, which are going to come into force in 2025, I believe, those we've already kept ready, and all it takes is to push that new configuration to a fleet of vessels, and the regulatory changes would be published. So the beauty about digital logs is you can actually control all of these elements uh, in a uniform manner across your entire fleet, so that you don't get pockets of people not knowing, or having a obsolete system running. uh, so this screen also that I'm showing right now is for the events. So may it be events, may it be a syntax as per the administration requirement or the flag state requirement, all of that can be predetermined in the logbook and set up. So in this case, this example shows that if I want to do a steering gear test, or I say pilot on board, you would get prompted with the auto text, which you can just with a single click push to the events log without having to type out the entire um, data, the event. And it also brings in consistency in how the reporting comes across the ships. So if at any point of time you wish to change any of this glossary that we create, the user or the company admin can just go in and alter it, and thereby achieve a very common standard of record keeping vis-a-vis new regulation or some changes in your SMS as well. So another point that I wanted to touch upon was, reporting formats. So reporting formats is something which is varies a lot across companies. So what we've done is we've made these templates, and these templates are actual replicas of how your logbook is or how your report is. So recently we were discussing with another client, they wanted a visitor's logbook, and the visitor's logbook has 3 columns. But do you need a form for that, or can you incorporate it as a logbook? And presently in our system, we can actually bring it in as a logbook, and you would have one of these as these selections. You could have a radar log. So the way we've addressed it also is we've said that, okay, whatever comes on the engine side, we'll take to the engine department. What's on the deck side, we take to the deck department. And within those departments, we can create the various sublogs that are desired. Of course, since it's configurable, there are some limitations with how many things we can configure. But as we move along, we are trying to make it more and more easier. And at some point, this configuration management system would be handed over to the client themselves to handle, rather than us having to be the intermediary to make the changes or make it make the new versions come out. So
Captain,
right.
may I possibly ask, so from what you said, what actually makes the NAVTOR solution unique to digital logbooks?
Yeah, so as we've gone along, I mean, it's been a journey now of from 2018, then from 2020, where you saw the regulation, and then operational logs came in. We've seen that every one of our clients is more inclined towards doing something very much similar to what their paper-based log is, and ensuring that the users do not get disoriented by going digital. So what has been unique about us is that we are able to give them a somewhat similar solution as to their paper-based log keeping, which is configurable and gives them the flexibility to add more parameters as per their operating norms or as per their management system. So that's been the unique part of our logbooks, which makes it uh, much more, let's say, adaptable to the company systems as well as beneficial. And for us, that has been the USP so far. So when I look at why which logs can go paper to digital, I think there are numerous logs, and now, like what Richard said, what's the USP? We can make any number of logs based on the system that we have created, and that means that you can have one unified system for all your log keeping. All these stacks of paper that you have to store in warehouses for history as well as on the ship would be something of the past. And that brings us also to the other point that you can also embed a lot of your rules and regulations within the logbooks to make sure that your log keeping is accurate. We've also to ensure there was a question by Richard talking about analytics. So everyone is in this day and age looking at data and trying to really, um, let's say, monetize the data to the extent that you can have some benefits in efficiency or maybe cost savings, or there can be multiple objectives achieved out of that. So when it comes to data, you of course need very good and accurate data. So one part is of course having a lot of validations and alerts. So we have a model where you can introduce these. Of course, what we've noticed is that when you're working with ships and they've been recording things in logbooks, there's been no one looking over their shoulder to see what they're writing. So you've sort of relied upon what they were doing as a best practice or as good seamanship or whatever the company training was provided. But when you put one of these systems in, then it makes it a little bit more balanced, that it can check what is going in using objective rules. And once those objective rules are breached, maybe there would be an alert or a hard stop to say that you got to correct it before you go in. So there is a advantage and a disadvantage to it, because some people don't like it and it sort of stops them from making the entry. So you can actually turn them on or turn them off as per what you desire.
So,
When
Captain,
these, yeah.
one final question. I'm so sorry. How do NAVTOR logbooks handle sensor data and also validations and the accuracy of the data?
Right. So validations and accuracy is, like I mentioned, demonstrated here, can be, formula based, which you can enter in for a field. So if you have a field that is coming from the Navbox API, I would be just selecting Navbox API and that field would come in. We're also working with a few clients to get in from their engine control systems, RPM information or other such data, which can be brought directly in. So this is all configurable on the screen here, and would pick it up from the Navbox API that we have created, which has sensor tag lists included right now. So, once we get that data in, then of course it's also, you don't want to have garbage in and garbage out. So you may want to have some alerts or notifications on deviations. So these parts are also configurable, and the user would get these alerts. Likewise, when you view this module in the office, you would be able to see those ones which are outliers, and inclusive of what explanations were given by the staff when they were inputting such data. Um, so we also talked about analytics briefly earlier, and midway once once when I was going through the presentation. So these are some of the dashboards that we have. We can also give APIs to these, and once you have these APIs, you can actually model what you like or what you desire as per your environmental reporting norms or requirements on board. But these are more oriented towards what you would see in the office. Once you have these APIs available, or we provide you the BI solution, you can actually use these interactive dashboards to slice and dice the information as required. So what we have actually also seen, which is an advantage from going digital, is from logs. The uh, first and foremost target would have been that you automate a few reports, so that's possible. And once you have good data, then analytics also should be possible. And so these are three things besides just going digital that are achievable now. So when you look at digital transformation, the first part of our journey was looking at the regulation and seeing how MEPC 31274 was requiring logs, looking at all the other encryption and other details provided in the IMO guideline. But then on, after making a solution which can be deployed on board, onboarding is the most critical part, which I outlined at the beginning, which makes it sort of settle on board the ships and get them to make the take that step forward. Then, of course, as you go along, if we add in all the validations and alerts that you desire, compliance and other tools can really be very effectively monitored, as well as ensured that things are running right. There's a lot of analytics that we can derive, and uh, by adding more logs under one umbrella, we're not just talking about an oil record book now, we're talking about many logs. So earlier, the comparison would always be that I buy a logbook for $30 and now I'm spending X amount of money for the digital logs. So that's a lot more expensive. But now when you have many logs under one, with the scope at increasing, it really is cost beneficial and has all the other advantages that we outlined. And as we step into the future, more and more integrations are coming in. We are working on those, and we expect logs to have more automated data as things progress. So from our perspective, it becomes quite a win-win situation for the office and the vessel. So we are increasingly looking at greener goals and safety and smartness. All of this in the data entry versus reports would all be possible using digital logs. So I don't want to touch upon this too much now, but I think I've come to the last part of my presentation. This is just a little snippet on the mobile app that we have. As we go along, you can actually access this online. We would leave the link available, and for those who are interested, you can even download it now from the Android or iOS store. So for now, we have restricted it only to the operational log, so you can actually log a voyage in. You can make an engine room record book entry, which is related to any of the parameters or other forms for the auxiliary engines or main engines. Again, these are all a mirror image of what is there in the desktop application, because we create this as a link to the actual logbook on board. So this is a preview of the task list, where you can just click on the hyperlinks and complete it. Then if you're looking at having a real-time checklist, this is also a way you could just go about having a checklist and complete log keeping, as well as operational records can be maintained in a more efficient manner. So I think I stop here, and I hand over back to you, Richard, because I hope I haven't uh, taken more time, but yeah, probably there can be more points to discuss or questions to take at this point.
Thank you, Captain Amitabh. No, it's always interesting to hear, especially as there's so much change going on. Just a quick wrap up, if I may. I'll put my slide up very, very briefly. What we've just seen, to be succinct, is that NAVTOR has increased the number of logs to give a full set of logbooks now, which really makes it much more efficient and much more cost effective. And also automating data coming into the logs, reducing repetitive tasks, and also helping with those entries. The second point really that was talked about is the adding of customized checklists to companies' own specifications. Helps improve workflows, probably increases familiarization as well, and also avoids data entry errors. So those are my main takeaways. I'm sure there are other takeaways that everyone's taken from this presentation. And again, thank you, Captain Amitabh. That was a deep dive into what's changed.